Okay, well, we'll begin. I know people are probably going to find their way to this program, but we'll start. And we are recording this program, and it'll be available to watch on YouTube for more people to watch. So welcome to our summer reading roundup. My name is Paul Sevilla. I'm the Public Services Librarian, and I'm so glad you can join us tonight. We're looking forward to giving you some good reading recommendations. This program is part of the library's Adult Summer Reading Program, sponsored by the Friends of the Livermore Library. Color Your World is the theme of the summer reading program this year. And summer reading is for grown-ups too. Individuals age 18 and over are invited to participate in a fun-filled summer reading program. And participants who complete the challenge by August 12th will earn entry into a raffle drawing for a chance to win a $50 gift card to a local restaurant or business. We also have summer reading challenges for teens and kids of all ages. Special this year, every minute you read counts towards Livermore's community reading goal of 500,000 minutes read this summer. Woo! We can do it, right? We can do it. I know we can. So now let me introduce my fellow library staff members who will be presenting their reading recommendations tonight. So if you can wave or I don't know, do something. So Supervising Library Assistant Reuben Ramirez. Yay! Teen Services Librarian Jennifer Mosel. Teen Services Librarian Caitlyn Lung. Library Assistant Nallely Cervantes. Nallely. And I'm Paul. So let me introduce my co-hosts this evening. If you can unmute yourselves and give us a shout out. Literacy Coordinator, Carey Jones.
Hi, everybody.
And Electronic Resources Librarian, Ellen Dean, who will say a few words about our new online public access catalog called BiblioCommons.
Thanks so much, Paul. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen. And hopefully some of you have already taken the opportunity to explore the new online catalog. But for those that haven't, I would like to really encourage you to visit our site. It's at livermorelibrary.bibliocommons.com. And I've pasted that into the chat for you, so it's super easy. Now, tonight, some of our presenters are going to share their usernames in the new catalog with you. And you can check them out and decide if you want to follow them and learn all about the different things that they're reading. Now, the other great thing that I just want to mention is the catalog makes searching the library's collections easier than ever. You'll find tools to organize your reading history, you can share book reviews, and you can even view our staff recommendations and reading lists. So we really want you to check that out and start using it. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our first presenter tonight, Nallely Cervantes.
Hello and welcome. All right, so my first book, we're starting off kind of serious, is going to be a nonfiction read. Okay, Say Nothing, A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland by Patrick Radden Keefe. In December 1972, Jean McConville, a 38-year-old mother of 10, was taken from her home by masked intruders, never to be seen again. Keefe used the McConville story or case as a starting point for the tale of a society wrecked by violent guerrilla war. So he uses this case to present the story of the Troubles, And if you don't know about the Troubles, it was when there was a conflict in Northern Ireland. They wanted to separate from the UK, and it lasted for about 30 years, from the late 60s to the late 90s. I really enjoyed this book, even though there was a lot of history. It reads almost like a fiction. For those of you that don't venture into nonfiction very often, and if you're into audiobooks, the narrator is Irish, and he's also a great storyteller. Things that I enjoyed about this was the way that it slowly unraveled the case of what happened to Jean McConville, as it tells you of all the violence that was unintentional or intentionally caused by the two factions, or sometimes even three factions, that were battling this civil conflict. And so I'll leave this book with this quote from it that I think is kind of relevant in our times right now. Outrage is conditioned not by the nature of the atrocity, but by the affliction of the victim and the perpetrator. Should the state be accorded more leniency because, legally speaking, it has a monopoly on legitimate use of force? Or conversely, should we hold soldiers and cops to a higher standard than paramilitaries? And this also ties into the next one, which is History is Not Dead. And this is my second pick, We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. It is considered a young adult, and in particular, I would like to recommend the audiobook. It is very excellently narrated, and it is told through the eyes of various teens that were incarcerated during World War II. So it's a collective accounting of a tight-knit group of young Nisei, which are second-generation Japanese-American citizens whose lives are irrevocably changed by the mass U.S. incarceration of World War II here in the U.S. And it's a great insight into how these teens dealt with everything that was presented to them. A lot of them grew up in San Francisco, which is just, over the bridge, as one says. And it really hits close to you if you have visited these locations that they talk about, or even if you grew up in the area. So there is one quote: "I'm not guilty of anything but being born with this face," that I think holds true even today. And then my next pick is also considered a YA. It's The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Woolley. Donis, who is part Ojibwe, defers attending college to take care of her mother after the family is struck by a tragedy. She reluctantly becomes involved in the investigation of a series of drug-related deaths that is plaguing not only her town, but her tribe. I found the narrator, or I should say Donis' story, to be very compelling. She has grit and determination, and it comes across well in the words that the author presents. There's a lot to unpack in this novel, so be prepared if you do read it. It deals with addiction, inherited trauma, family troubles, but it also has a tight-knit community interwoven into the story. And it is considered, quote unquote, a crossover, so it's for YA, adults, for any fan of mystery or thrillers. There is a bit of mystery that gets solved in the end. And my fourth pick is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.A. Schwab. And you might have already heard about this book because it's making its rounds. So this is the story of Addie LaRue, or Adeline. So, making a Faustian bargain to live forever but never be remembered, a woman from early 18th century France endured unacknowledged for centuries before meeting a man who finally remembers her name. So I thought this was a unique story of someone fighting for her independence when there was little options for women, especially women born in the social class that she was born into. And it kind of takes different aspects of her life throughout her story, throughout history. And one of the quotes that I really enjoyed about this one is, "Books, she has found, are a way to live 1,000 lives or to find strength in a very long one." And this leads into my last pick, which is Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors by Sonali Dev. It is a retelling of an awesome favorite. I bet you can guess which one. features the Rajas, an Indian American family descended from royalty who live in San Francisco. Again, local. Dr. Trisha Raj, an acclaimed neurosurgeon, and DJ Kane, an up-and-coming chef, clash when they first meet, but soon their assumptions about each other start to crumble as they get to know each other. So this is a romance, and it has elements of the Austen classic, but it also has a sensitive examination of class and privilege, and the family dynamic that we tend to find in a lot of Austen's novels also comes through. One of the quotes I enjoyed from this book is, "The fact that you have the things you have isn't wrong. Not understanding what you have is." So there is a sequel, which we have, Recipe for Persuasion, and coming out soon in Sense and Sensibility. Thank you. And now we have our librarian, Caitlyn Lung, who will be introducing her picks for this summer.
All right. Get that up. All right. So, hello. My name is Caitlyn Long, and I'm going to start by a little bit of a cheater recommendation. This is The Joy of Cooking, and if you've not heard about it, this is one of the classic cookbooks, most classic cookbooks you will ever find. The first edition of this book was published in 1931. This most recent version is significantly heftier than the previous version. I personally own the 2006 75th anniversary copy, but I'm really glad we got this newest version in the library because it has been expanded and it has so many more recipes while still having many of the same qualities that the previous versions have. Now, if you've not seen one of these cookbooks, they have more than just recipes. So the great thing about The Joy of Cooking is for each chapter, and there's a chapter for vegetables, there's several different chapters for bread. Those tend to be the ones that I use most often. There's a chapter for meats, there's a chapters for fruits. But basically, at the start of each chapter, there's information for you to read about the different kinds of ingredients that you can use. And I think it's fantastic. I really love actually reading this cookbook, much as it sounds silly, but it is a ton of fun to learn about the different ingredients you can use. My next slide is, there it is. Okay, so can you tell that I enjoy cooking? This is my favorite hobby, and I did quite a lot of it over the past year and a half or so. This one is fantastic. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat, sorry. And this book is less of a cookbook and more of a how-to guide that teaches you why recipes and techniques work. And one quote, I forgot to read the quote from my last one, but the quote from this one is, "Anyone can cook anything and make it delicious, so long as you know how to accurately and precisely apply salt, fat, acid, and heat." And those are like the four main components on how to make food taste good when you're cooking. And this cookbook is a little stained. I like it. It's mine. This copy happens to be mine. And one thing I love especially about this cookbook is the beautiful illustrations. There's not many in the previous one I featured, Joy of Cooking. There's not many illustrations in that one. It's all black and white. Unlike many of the more modern day cookbooks that are going to have like lots of glossy photographs, that one just has some line drawings. This one has these beautiful watercolors, and a lot of them have cheeky little elements to them, so little tongue-in-cheek sort of additions. Another great thing about this is like literally a book to read. The recipe section is maybe the last third of the book, but like the whole a big chunk of this book is going to be actually learning about why salt affects food the way it does, why fat affects food the way it does, how acid and heats and all of that help you make food taste delicious. So this one is great, and it's won a bunch of awards, and I can see why. All right, so next we've got Let's Make Ramen. This one's actually a comic book. So this is an illustrated look at the recipes and history behind this delicious soup. And a quote from this book is, "One fun thing about ramen is that it is such a relatively new part of Japanese cuisine. At a mere 100 years old, there's a lot of opportunity to get creative and riff off the basic fundamentals." So this is by Hugh Amano and Sarah Bacon, and it talks about the different styles of broth and how you would make them. It talks about the different toppings and how you make those. It tells a little bit about the history, but again, this is a relatively new addition to Japanese cooking, so it mostly focuses on how to make a delicious bowl of soup as opposed to the history behind it. But there's a whole chapter on how you can make your own noodles if you wish, all the toppings that go on it. It's just really cute and well researched, and it is a great introduction to this yummy soup. I've made the miso ramen in here, and it's yummy. There's all sorts of different kinds that you can try, but I recommend checking that one out. So this next one, again, is about cooking. This one's called Sweetness and Lightning. This one is about a recently widowed father who learns how to cook so that he can better take care of his young daughter. Now, this is a manga. So for those who are unfamiliar, manga is a Japanese comic book. So if you do check this one out, just know that the pages you'll read from right to left, as opposed to English, which typically would be left to right. So it's right to left, down, right to left, and down. But the illustrations are pretty good. And what I really like about this is the really sweet story about this dad and his daughter. They share grief. The loss of his wife is fairly recent. I think when the first book starts, it's about 6 months before the beginning of the story. And so you get a little bit of their grief throughout the story, but mostly it's cooking and how learning to cook with one of his students. He's a high school teacher, so one of his students helps him learn to cook. They really learn together because her mom is a celebrity chef and owns a restaurant, and they use the restaurant space to do their cooking together. So they learn together, and his student becomes like a big sister to his daughter, and it's just the sweetest little story. It's really a cute slice of life, and I highly recommend it to anybody who wants a really adorable, easy read. It's a really cute one. All right, so here's my last pick. Delicious in Dungeon. This one is also cooking themed, but it's a little on the sillier side. So in this story, a party of poor explorers eat their way through the monsters in the dungeon as they embark on a quest to rescue one of their teammates. So main guy's sister gets captured by a dragon, but adventure is kind of expensive. They need all sorts of gear and they don't have enough money for food. So our main character here decides that they'll get their gear, but the food they are going to forage for. So the monsters they kill, they will eat. And it ends up being honestly pretty hilarious because, let me find one. Should have bookmarked this. They show you like the fictional distribution of how many calories and how much fat and iron and calcium and all the nutrients that a certain dish made out of these monsters is going to give you. So I think it's pretty funny. This series, we've got we're almost up to date on this one at Springtown. So check it out if you would like a amusing take on a comic book. Again, this is another manga, and eating your way through a dungeon. All right, so our next presenter is going to be teen librarian Jennifer.
Give me 1 second to panic and share my screen. Okay, so is anybody else really hungry after hearing all of Caitlyn's wonderful selections? Because my stomach is actually growling. So my name is Jennifer Mosel. I'm the Teen Services Librarian, and I read a lot. Ask me if I've seen the latest TV show or movie, and the answer is a hard no. Ask about the latest teen novel, you're more likely to hear a yes, I have read that. So here are 5 of my favorites from within the last year. And if you do see me in the library, definitely be sure and stop me for a chat, because I'm always happy to talk books. In fact, you might have a hard time getting me to stop talking about books. So a quick note, 3 of the books I'm going to tell you about tonight are shelved in the adult section. Teens will gobble those up. 2 of the books are shelved in the teen section, and adults will gobble those up. Yes, I did use gobble right after Caitlyn talked about eating. So remember that age is a marketing thing. It's a guideline on content, but it's purely marketing. So please make sure that you check all the areas of the library, because there's wonderful things to read throughout each area. So first up, I have The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. So you want to clear your schedule and settle in, because this is one heck of a story with gorgeous imagery, tremendous world building, and serious action scenes. You will finish and go, next, please. Well, welcome to the waiting game. It's the start of a trilogy, but you definitely do not want to wait to read this. The world building was dynamic. After just a few pages, I was completely immersed and wondering who on earth I could bribe so that my eye would bleed gold. Now, by the way, bleeding gold's actually a bad thing in Dika's world. The Gilded Ones, who bleed gold, face hurdles of sexism, prejudice, and downright hatred. Conversely, once they find their stride, the Gilded Ones find what would have been called girl power in the olden days, and now is just plain power. They have to remember, though, that they can be turned against in seconds. They'll be cheered on one moment, and the next, the prejudice and hatred will resurface. Next up, I have The Anthropocene reviewed by John Green. Yes, that John Green, the massively successful and popular YA author, has published his first adult nonfiction, a double whammy of firsts. I'm still reading this one, so yes, I am recommending a book I actually haven't finished because it's incredible. Pieces of Our Geological Age, rated on a 5-star scale by an author I highly respect and admire. I am treasuring every single word. It's funny, it's emotional, and it is so powerful. It's also a book you do not have to read beginning to end. Read the first chapter, but also don't miss his small print reviews on the end papers and on the half title page. Then jump around to what strikes you. I'm seeing things in chat. Do I need to be paying attention in chat? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so read the first chapter. Don't miss his small print reviews on the end papers and the half title page. Then jump around throughout the book to whatever strikes you. Are you a Disney fan? Skip to the chapter on the Hall of Presidents. Do you consume Diet Dr. Pepper in quantities that scare your family? Read what John Green has to say about his own love of the soft drink. Do Canadian geese strike you with a feeling of terror? Wait until you hear what John Green has to say about them. Think it's impossible to rate viral meningitis? Ha! You don't know Green. I think he gave it 1 star. Oh, and with this book, when you reach the end and you decide I want more, there's more. The book started as a podcast, so not all of the episodes made it into the book. And even the ones that did, I bet you end up listening to those as well. Then I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is one that Nallely and I actually fought over to see who would get to present. So consider it recommended by 2 of your librarians. So do you have a book that sits on your to be read shelf forever? Of course you do. We're readers and we suffer the plight of too mmany books, too little time. This is when I become grateful for the nudge from my reader friends. I had a bookseller I trust immensely DM me on Instagram and say, you simply must read this now. She was right. So consider this my own nudge to you. Read this book now. I fear that seeing the word magic in its blurb, many will not grab this treasure and just pass it on by. Yes, magical youth populate pages, but this is not a book about magic or creatures. It's a book about bias, racism, love, hate, family, and finding oneself with a strong helping of heartwarming friendship. Boy, I hope I can get through the next part of actually pronouncing each of the character species, because I know I'm going to mess it up. But the fact that a gnome, a sprite, a wyvern, a green glob that defines categorization, a shapeshifter, and the Antichrist are the ones that bring all of those issues forward and help the reader navigate. While Linus, the main human character, traverses a path to, dare we say, happiness. Well, those creatures have quite a lot to say and share. Listen carefully, grow as a person, carry those lessons into your life, and not only will you be, but those around you will also be better for it. Next up is Luck of the Titanic by Stacy Lee. If you attended last summer's presentation, yes, we do this at the beginning of every summer, so come back next year. You may remember me mentioning Stacy Lee's The Downstairs Girl. It should not be a surprise to see Stacy make an appearance on my list again this year. She makes an appearance just about every year she publishes. I'm a huge fan of her historical fiction. She has an uncanny ability to create feisty, spunky, determined heroines and plop them into historical settings that end up teaching you a bit about not only that moment in time, but also the part that the Chinese played in it. Did you know there were Chinese aboard the Titanic and that 6 of the 8 that were aboard survived? When that little historical nugget was brought to Stacy's attention, she fired up her research engines and turned it into Luck of the Titanic. You know how the story ends. It's not a mystery what happens on the Titanic. Stacy brings a bit of lightness to the tale, however, with a tender story about a brother and a sister who are acrobats. The brother is ready to move on with his life. He's done being an acrobat, but the sister is ready to become the next star of the Ringling Brothers. Oh, the ship may sink at the end, but you will be a little surprised too. Lastly, I have Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. So you remember those doors that are often discovered in favorite childhood books, you know, the ones in the back of the wardrobe or the hole that you fall down, the ones we always hoped that we would stumble across when we were kids. Have you ever thought about what happens when you come back? Well, the kids that stumble through those doorways end up at Eleanor West's home for wayward children to try to reacclimate and come to terms with the high probability that they're not going home, but they are home. McGuire swings those famous doors back open for us lowly adults, but the innocence is gone. Murder is tossed into the plot, and holy cow, I was stuck to the pages until the very end and immediately grabbing the next 5 novellas from the library the very next day. Pure delight mixed in with pure gore. It was pure perfection. And oh, when you're hooked to the Wayward Children series, just like I am, be assured there's at least 3 more novellas on the way. So next up is, with his top 5, is Reuben Ramirez.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Jennifer. And I think I have a few more books that I'm going to read, and I get a lot of reading material from Jennifer as of late. Most of the readings that I do are generally boring nonfiction and generally history in nature. But I decided to venture outside of what I usually read, and I read some really, really good stuff. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And let's see if we can do this. Okay, so my first book is Ring Shout by P. Dejeli Clark, and I probably mispronounced his name really badly. This is a fiction book. Like I said, I usually don't read fiction very often, let alone read a horror fiction, a sci-fi. But this is what this book is. The title once again is Ring Shout, and it's basically a historical novella that gives you a lot of supernatural twists. And what I like about it, it's entranced in U.S. history. It's talking about the Ku Klux Klan and how a group of folks resist this group of aliens per se, and they have to try to save a town and save society as we know it. And it's really funny in certain aspects, and it's sort of gruesome in other aspects, because obviously it's a horror book, a horror story. And it really got me into wanting to learn more about Georgia in the 20s. And that's what this book really did for me. And I hope that's what it does for folks who are looking to read something that's a little different, a little far out there. And once again, the title is Ring Shout. I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say it's a very different type of book. And if you're into sci-fi, you're into a little terror, and you're into wanting to learn a little bit more about US history that's usually not told, go ahead and check this book out. The next book that I read, and once again, this is another fiction book, and it's another sci-fi. It's a story, it's a book of many different novelitas, different vignettes, short stories and it's entitled Faces at the Bottom of the Well, The Permanence of Racism by Derek A. Bell. And this is basically short stories, sci-fi. There's about 5 or 6 of them. I can't talk about every single one, but I'll talk briefly about one of the vignettes. It's aliens come down to Earth and come to the US, and they go to Washington, D.C., and they give a proposition to the government of the United States of America. And the aliens basically say, we will save your country and your world in exchange for the African Americans in your country. So the government and society is given a choice. Do we allow a certain segment of our society to be taken away in order for society at large to be saved? That's an interesting topic and interesting discussions right there. And this is basically a really, really, really good book. Really great stories in there that make you think about U.S. society. And it's it's basically a historical fiction from the perspective of African Americans, specifically using U.S. law and legal cases. So if you're interested in sort of out there short sci-fi stories, check this book out. If you're interested in finding out about and learning about U.S. history, specifically from the perspective of Black folks, check out this book entitled Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Derek Bell. And you're probably catching a theme here. I don't read fiction very often. I usually read nonfiction, but as you can see, the fiction that I usually read has something to do with nonfiction. The next book, The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Enriquez. This book, oh man, it made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me punch the air because it brought back a lot of memories of my childhood, growing up on the Texas-Mexican border. This book is about a family that moves from Mexico to the US, of all places, Delaware, I believe. And they move into an apartment complex that's predominantly Latinos from different parts of Latin America, whether it's Mexico, Central America, the Caribbeans, and South America. And it talks about community. It shows love. It shows love of community, love of family, and budding love between a young girl and a young boy. And it brings to light and it brings to life the life and the lives and the struggles that undocumented folks from Latin America into the US struggle with on a day-to-day basis, and how they create their own new home and their own new communities, while at the same time struggling with the day-to-day issues that we all struggle with, on top of trying to figure out where they belong in society, and always having to look behind their back and think about what might or might not happen to them because of the pigmentation of their skin, or because of the accents that they have when they speak. It's a real good story. And once again, this is pure fiction, but obviously it talks about the stories and lives of unknown Americans. Once again, the title of the book is The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Enriquez. My next book, I love this book. Oh my God, it's super long. It has a gazillion characters. You get lost, you get found, you get lost, and you get found again with the different characters of different storylines. It's entitled There by Tommy Orange. Tommy Orange is a local Native American author. He's from Oaktown, Oakland, California. And in this book, you have multiple characters and their lives intertwine, their stories intertwine, sometimes without them actually even really meeting in this book. And it talks about, once again, the day-to-day realities of Native Americans, because most Native Americans do not live on reservations. Most Native Americans actually live off of the reservation. And tidbit of information, the largest population of Native Americans in the country is here in the Bay Area, specifically Oakland, but throughout the Bay Area. And Tommy Orange talks about this through his characters. And he weaves in 500 years of history without you even knowing. All you have to do is just listen to what the characters are talking about and what their stories are, and you can hear it. It's a well-written story, and if you want to find out a little bit about Native American history, her story, our story, both past and present, check out this book. It's a really, really, really good book, really good story. Once again, the title is There by local Oakland author Tommy Orange. And my last book, finally, it's a nonfiction book, what I usually read. It's entitled Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Ako, or Ako. I killed his last name, I apologize. But in the current times that we're living in and we're experiencing, I think this is a very good book to allow yourself to make time to read. It basically talks about the issues of racism here in the US within our society. And I know racism is something difficult and challenging to talk about, and it's something that most people don't want to talk about because it's just really hard and it's really challenging. And I've read quite a number of books specifically on how to talk about racism. And this one right here is one that I highly recommend because Emmanuel, or Manny, as his friends call him, really talks about it and invites you to listen and be a part of a conversation in a very down-to-earth manner. And as you're reading it, you feel like Manny is your friend, and that lowers the bars, or that lowers the barriers of our ability to talk about racism and how it affects us as individuals, how it affects us as a society. And there's parts of the book where I find myself laughing because it genuinely felt like I was talking with a friend of mine, about racism and about the issues of race. And at other times, I found myself nodding my head, saying, yeah, I completely agree with you. And what I also appreciate about the book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, is Manny doesn't try to push it down your throat. It literally is a conversation. And there's folks that I've talked with to say, but I don't want to talk about all the bad stuff. What can I do to help make things better? Manny gives you some ideas, some suggestions on what we can do as individuals to tackle racism and to make our society a better society for every single one of us. If you have the opportunity, and if there's only one book that I would suggest that you read out of all these great books that we're offering, is Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And you can read all of the different books. I have tons of lists on BiblioCore, and you can just search R.J. Ramirez, RJRAMIREZ, and you'll see tons of lists of books that I've read, and I believe we all have a handle on BiblioCore, so you can check it out. And as you can see right there on the right corner of the screen, there's my BiblioCore username, RJ Ramirez. So with no more to say, I shall now hand it over to Paul, and he will talk about his selections.
Thank you, Reuben. I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, can everybody see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Hold on. Okay, so my first book is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So I didn't really like Andy Weir's second novel, Artemis, that much, but this one, he's back in full form. I was hooked from the opening lines of Project Hail Mary. It's a fun and interesting space adventure akin to The Martian. A funny and relatable protagonist that reminds readers of Mark Watney from The Martian. So, and it takes you to unexpected places, and it has some surprises. So, and it's a science fiction novel that balances both science and fiction very well, something that Andy Weir does. You learn interesting science facts by reading this science fiction. And I highly recommend listening to the audiobook because the narrator is fun to listen to. And there's a diegetic sound that you can only hear by listening to the audiobook. And my next book is, hold on, Historicizing Fear, Ignorance, Vilification, and Othering. This is a nonfiction book, and this book helps us understand why there's still so much hatred and racially motivated violence in America. It provides an unflinching look at racism, mistrust of the other, oppression, and marginalization. And if you want to understand why, white supremacism and white rage still persists and continue to threaten our society, then check out this book. And here we go. My next book is Anxious People by Friedrich Bachmann. I was immediately drawn to the title of this book because I'm an anxious person. So if I see a book about anxious people, I kind of piques my interest. But this is a delightful and a touching novel by the best-selling author of A Man Called Ove and Beartown. I enjoyed reading this book and even got a bit misty-eyed at the end. So the story begins when a failed bank robber takes a group of strangers at an apartment viewing. And that's pretty much the central narrative. The narrative is centered towards that hostage situation. And then you get to know the characters, you get to know the everyone involved in this crazy situation, and you get to learn about them and find out how they're interrelated or how their humanity connects them. There were moments when I smiled and chuckled reading this book. And there are many nuggets of wisdom in it. There's also a bit of mystery. You learn bits about the different people as you read, and then you kind of put the pieces together about what's, at first it's kind of chaotic, and then kind of like how are these, where is this going? And then it kind of comes together at the end wonderfully. And so go read Anxious People. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll want to visit Stockholm. Okay, so the next book I will recommend is The Reason I Jump by Naoki Higashida. Now, Naoki is a very smart, very self-aware, and very charming 13-year-old boy with autism. And this is a one-of-a-kind memoir that demonstrates how an autistic mind thinks, feels, perceives, and responds in ways few of us can imagine. Using an alphabet grid to painstakingly construct words, sentences, and thoughts that he is unable to speak out loud, Naoki answers even the most delicate questions that people want to know, such as, why do people with autism talk so loudly and weirdly? Why do people with autism don't want to make eye contact when they talk? And what's the reason you jump? And Naoki's answer to that question is, when I'm jumping, it's as if my feelings are going upward toward the sky. So this is an interesting book if you ever want to get inside the mind of a person with autism. And it's a charming book. It's easy to read. You can read it in a day, and it's honest and it has a lot of heart. You'll see the world through the eyes of this 13-year-old boy with autism. Highly recommend The Reason I Jump. And I just want to add that The Reason I Jump and Anxious People and the book that Reuben recommended, the Book of Unknown Americans, they are all being considered for the Livermore Reads Together. So if you want to let us know what would you like to read, just I'm going to share the link to the survey. Oops, I keep messing up. Okay, that's the link to the survey, to the Livermore Reads Together survey. And we'd like to know what would you like to read. So the last book I'm going to recommend is The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. So this is an important book. I think it's and very helpful, very helpful. This book offers important life lessons that anyone can and should apply in their day-to-day lives. So some of the lessons that this book imparts is your life is decided in the here and now and not defined by your past experiences. You are responsible for your own emotions or internal being. It is up to you to alter or control your emotions regardless of external circumstance. External validation is pointless. Just embrace your strengths and go out swinging. Take the hits, but come back stronger. So don't pursue rewards, rather do things for learning and self-fulfillment. Seek fulfillment from the journey of growth, and don't forget to reflect on how far you've come from time to time. There are many more important lessons in this book. I recommend the audiobook, listening to the audiobook, which we have. So finally, one thing you learn from this book is that life is not a linear path, but a dance. So have the courage to dance the dance of life. And with that, we open it up to comments and questions. We'd love to hear from you. Type your questions on the chat or your reactions. And if you like, you can also unmute yourself And if you'd like to speak to us. So I hope you enjoyed our recommendations.
And participants, my TBR is not long enough, so I want to hear what you have to say. What are you reading now? And you can type it in chat if you don't want to share your voice.
Well, you know what? I got some really good book suggestions from the rest of my fellow panelists. So my book reading the piles are getting taller and taller as I'm hearing everyone's great suggestions.
I agree. I agree with you, Reuben. It's just so great to hear what everybody's reading.
And I'm very, very excited. I know that Ellen made a plug at the beginning, but please definitely check out our new online catalog, BiblioCore, because the book lists on there, you're going to go nuts. I'm going nuts creating them. I think we're all going nuts creating them, but it's a lot of fun to be able to see if you're looking for a specific topic or just that you'll be able to see staff reviews too. And Ellen just put the link into our new catalog again in the chat. So definitely make sure you click on it and check it out. And then Paul and Reuben both talked about their usernames too. So check out their own private lists as well as the Livermore Library ones.
I just wanted to say that I have read There by Tommy Orange, and I've also read Anxious People. Those are great books. However, I'm sorry, I will not be cooking and I will not be reading about cooking, but this has been a great webinar and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks for coming. And isn't takeout great, Jan?
Yes, it certainly is.
I don't know if you saw, but after, while Caitlyn was talking, I put in the chat that it needed to be live with samples.
Like Costco in the old days, right?
How about this one? The joy of cooking and reading, just not at the same time.
You can do it, but just not with a library book.
There you go.
So Jan, how are you doing with your summer reading? Have you earned your first badge? You probably.
I should have probably read the tutorial for Beanstack, but I didn't. So I'm kind of struggling with it. But every day I get an email that says, you won a prize, you won a prize. And I think it's because I read every day. I'm not sure. I haven't claimed any yet, but it's great. I love it. And I do audiobooks and I read short stories at night. So it looks like I'm reading 2 books at one time, but I kind of am, but I love it. I really do. And I've picked up the signs. We love summer reading. And I've given them to my friends and people I know, people I don't even know have a sign in their front lawn. It's great.
Jan.
So as you can see, or you can read and hear, the different folks here at the library, we have a plethora of reading materials, and we have a plethora of what type of materials we love to read. So feel free to ask us, what we're reading personally. We can give you some, I think, really good, recommendations or insights onto different types of reading material, whether it's sci-fi, nonfiction, cooking, teen. And you know what, just because it says teen or YA doesn't mean it's just for teen and YAs. thanks to our teen librarians here, I've actually been able to read a lot more fiction and literature, and not just the boring old nonfiction. So props, high fives to Jennifer, Caitlyn, Nallely for breaking me into teen materials.
Thank you, Reuben. That's really nice. And you're absolutely right. Anyone who skips the teen section is missing a third of our great collection, because, you know, a third's in youth, a third's in teen, a third's in adult. Don't strike it out just because it says teen on the spine.
I hate to take too much time, but I do
No,
want
no.
to say, I volunteer in the bookstore, which we're working on to reopen, but we struggle with crossover books. You find some of them in fiction, some of them in young adult. It's really hard. Harry Potter, I think, is everywhere in the bookstore. We don't know what to do with him. And the Twilight series and a lot of them, they're very popular and they're all crossover books. So everyone reads them, you know?
All right.
I have a great cartoon on my bulletin board by Caitlyn and I's desk that says, it's showing the young adult fiction section, and it actually says moms re-enter, or I can't even read it anymore, but it's moms pretending to be young adults fiction is actually the name of the section, which is true, right, Jan? I mean, if it's everywhere, everyone enjoys it.
The first Harry Potter book I ever read was given to me when I was working. I'm now retired for 10 years, by the way. I was working and my boss gave me the first Harry Potter book and said, here, you'll like this. And she was right. I loved them. Read all of them.
Okay, Paul, one more quick plug. Harry Potter Night is June 24th, and we are doing a Zoom program that evening. You will see my face, Caitlyn's face, and I think Nallely's face too. We're gonna have lots of fun that night for about an hour and a half, but even better, and it's all on Zoom, but even better, I think starting on Monday, we're gonna have kits ready for all the Harry Potter fans to take home so you can do activities in the comfort of your own home and also celebrate this year's theme, which I have to lean the right way, is Diagon Alley, which is behind me. That's my background. So be sure and join us on June 24th. Information is on our website. Thanks.
Great. All right. Well, you know, one more plug to our new website. Is it livermorelibrary.bibliocommons.com, right? Okay.
livermorelibrary.bibliocommons.com.
Yes, and you know, you can find a lot of lists there created by librarians and library staff members like us, including I'm going to create a book list for with the books that's recommended this evening. But we got lots of other books. I know everyone here creates a list almost weekly. So and yeah, follow us. Follow us on BiblioCommons, yeah, and we're gonna post this on YouTube so more people can watch it. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy summer reading.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.
All right.